Hi there. POV horror films, or I would like to call them found footage horror films, is a genre of horror films in the point of view of a camera showing the horrors that viewers see. Movies like Blair Witch Project, Cloverfield, The Taking of Deborah Logan, Wreck, As Above, So Below, The Fourth Kind, VHS, Paranormal Activity, and many other POV horror movies relate to this genre. Analog horror is a subgenre horror fiction visual style using old school televisions, VHS, and news broadcasts with cryptic messages, disturbing imagery, and very effective effects, creating an unsettling environment of the setting views on. These analog horror series include The Mandela Catalog, Local 58, The Backrooms, Marble Hornets, Vita Carnes, Dr. Nowhere, The Walton Files, and many, many more. These two visual styles are very different. You could not describe any of these two genres without either looking it up or explaining it in long sentences because they are so different compared to the way I've explained it. And there are many both movies and series of both of these concepts that go differently. Some are not popular and some are kind of just rare to looking at. But despite this, I believe there is a movie out there that I've seen when I was 10 years old. A film that is definitely not analog horror or POV, but is definitely one that was left behind and probably has not seen the light of day because, of course, I believe this movie is what got me into a fascination on both POV and analog horror. And for this video, we're gonna go over the one film that both got me into this position while also giving me night terrors at 5 years old. This is Invasion, or what's really called Infection. I'm gonna take you back in a time before I was into POV horror film, 2016. Yeah, remember those times when Stranger Things came out and Netflix was like the kind of like known thing that people would watch movies and all that? It was also a time when Stranger Things came out. So, before Stranger Things, pretend that Stranger Things just doesn't exist, alright? Now, when it comes to Netflix, what normally does it come to your mind when you think about Netflix? Original shows, original movies, different ideas and concepts, and of course, different kinds of horror films. But the thing is, though, Netflix doesn't really have much when it comes to the media or value of horror films. You have some that are very popular, but then you got some that are very low budgeted. Creep, for an example, is a really good film and all that, but not really a lot of people really got into it unless if you're one of the people that really got into POV horror films or found footage, then that's different. But some of these horror films were just low budget and just never really pay attention as much because either some were bad or some were just not really much really cared for the media. Hell, even POV horror films actually kind of falls in that kind of problem too. You have some that are original and really good, but then you have some that are just either unoriginal or very boring and most of the time has really bad CGI, really bad effects going on. And then me and my stepmom looked to find a film that we would watch and sit down. But then this would actually be the movie I would watch all over and over and over again, but still have nightmares of. And of course, it was Invasion, aka Infection. It's possible I went maybe a little too far with this one. Like I said before, Invasion is one of those kind of films where it's not POV or analog horror. It's not like one of those kind of films where in POV or in analog horror, you're looking at the perspective of like a harsh environment or a person holding a camera and then witnessing horror literally happening in front of them. Invasion has like a similar kind of situation where instead of just in a perspective of someone holding the camera, it's literally in the perspective of inside of a person's car, a cop car to be obvious.
Camera on and recording.
Oh.
I will try now to explain what this movie is supposed to be about. Evasion is about people, or pretty much a film about California Lawton people being attacked by a meteorite that contains an alien like parasite or virus, and the entire film is literally about them trying to figure out what this thing is, what is going on, and the purpose of it leads to literally attacks and then more driving around to getting away from the aliens. There's some very weird sound effects from both like the outside and even the alien sounds.
Yeah, like if you just heard that, yeah, that's one of the reverse voices.
And there's just also weird effects and sounds and even effects on the screen that just doesn't make any sense or just doesn't look right.
Run them over.
And then you have a few actors in the film that just pretty much just does nothing except if it's actually convenient to them when it comes to the scenes of the film. And even after watching this entire film, they literally, in the entire film, it's literally this one woman that escapes from the area, and they literally recircle to the exact same areas that they already been in, even though that's literally what they show in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Camera on and recording.
Which all this movie attempts to do is literally distract adults with circling around the exact same areas and all that to get away from the aliens. And I have analyzed, took notes, and watched this movie over and over to figure out and to literally know about this film, and I fucking hate it. Also, every time the main characters drive by and all that to the exact same dirty ass streets, there's always a showing of a fucking porta potty around. The porta potty is my favorite character of this entire film because I can relate, and honestly, if I was already pissed to all hell, I would take a shit in it. And look, I get it. This is a horror film that is low budget and poorly made. I am not the one that has the say of arguing about certain things. And hopefully none of the people that were around to see this movie like 2007, 2008, or maybe 2009-ish. I mean, I have no say either for this because I also made my own film literally back in high school.
You were a fool to take something so fragile, and it's mine. I'll make sure humanity will never be healed.
And even though it wasn't perfect, it was still something that I clearly did for the sake of making something. But anyway, here's my take on Invasion as a 20-year-old. Despite everything that I've just said about Invasion, I do believe there is something to talk about when it comes to both the movie and the setting itself. And that starts with asking myself a very simple question. What makes a sci-fi horror film scary? You would think it would just be something that would be the realism of something that actually would impact the real world, and sometimes it can. Though most of the time when it comes to sci-fi horror films, it mainly means extraterrestrials, aliens. But you have two kinds of sci-fi horror films when it involves aliens. You have either aliens want to take over humanity, but they have to kill humans in order to do so, or I'm gonna kidnap one human and then each time kidnap more to experiment and understand humans as a whole. When it comes to abducting humans to experiment and understand humans, you have the fourth kind that does this kind of thing, but kind of really in a weird way. Fire in the Sky does it in a way that's really scary, but also shows you the impactful, fucked up way in perspective. And then Alien Abduction, despite the fact that it wasn't theatrical, it was actually direct to DVD, it's still intense and really terrifying in the perspective of kids running from being abducted by aliens. If we are talking about aliens that take over humanity, there's a huge list of them. You have Independence Day that does this, you have They Live that does this. They do this with every single fucking World of Worlds film, and they do this with When the World Stands Still. And I get it. All of these films do exactly that. All of these films have a different way of pretty much showing what aliens can do and all that. But the question really I ask when it comes to the movie Invasion, though, is what else alien movie can you really think of that involves aliens affecting humans and taking over a host? And the one movie that you would think that pops up in your mind would be Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Which is strange, because all of these movies are completely different, especially when you consider the plot for both Invasion and Invasion of Body Snatchers. However, the difference between Invasion and Invasion of the Body Snatchers is the fact that compared to Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where in that film it infects plants and then it links onto humans, and the reason why they came to Earth to begin with was because their planet died, we never know exactly how the aliens or the reasoning why the aliens came to Earth. They just land with a meteor hitting Earth and then instantly affecting one human, and then it spreads to different people. Just me, but doesn't it seem strange that this film feels a little bit more scarier and realisticer when you think about how we don't even know where these guys came from? Again, in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, we know where they came from, but we didn't know exactly where the aliens in Invasion came from, though. And the implications, despite the fact of how hard it really is to understand it, is really interesting. In the beginning of the movie, there's a clip with a woman who pretty much talks about Lawton County and somewhere around that she's going to discover before it cuts for some interesting information that we read about said event. It explains how the entire footage that we will witness is all behind a dashboard camera. But the interesting about this information is they tell us what year this happened, how the agencies were trying to figure out what is going on that contains it, and that is in a dangerous red alert of a virus that landed and crashed because of a meteorite or a meteor. Unlike any of the other alien movies where some has to do with alien abduction or humans being kidnapped, this one specifically is about an alien race or alien kind of virus that lands to Earth and then takes over the host and infecting other people. And I know it's a weird thing because the movie wasn't really that great, but I always try to think about maybe the certain potentials about it, because this movie really could have been good. It had potential. It had some very interesting things. It had really interesting effects, and some of it could have planned out, but it just didn't fit. Let me mind you, this was a movie that I watched when I was 10 years old. This was on Netflix the same year when Stranger Things came out, and somehow the same year when Sister Location of Five Nights at Freddy's came out. The aliens from Invasion scared the living hell out of me to the point that I did not want to go outside in the complete pitch darkness. That can change a child. However, as an adult, when you're older, you realize, how the fuck did this scare me? How in the living fuck would this scare anyone with jump scares like this? Because the jump scares are just very off too. It is not just the special effects, it's not just the story or the pacing, it's also what they try to attempt to do to be scary. And it's just weird because all it is a bunch of people that attempt to try to be scary when it's convenient and just acting like a bunch of drunk idiots.
Well, that was fun. At this point, I would be using my baton. I would just be like, bam, 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 bam.
Rick, you there?
Jeremiah Home Entertainment actually does a really good job of showing the fear of what happens when aliens come to Earth and try to mimic humans. But they do it in a very scary and creepier way that you wouldn't expect. And this kind of analog is kind of one of the reasons and one of the things I could really think of if Invasion was actually good. But unfortunately, Invasion isn't good. But there's always ways to change and rectify what was bad and replace it with things that would actually make it more realistic and scary. And it always starts with what makes sci-fi horror movies scary, and then working along the changes of that. And when I mean by changes, I mean dialogue changes, pacing, story, maybe making the aliens more impactful and more terrifying, and maybe adding additional things that could be more creepier. Again, like I've said, POV and analog horror are two different kind of genres. I try to think that Invasion is kind of one of those because it has a very interesting kind of way of how the movie perceives with being shown in a dashboard cop camera's car. However, again, there's two sides of this. You have POV where it's very impactful, but depending on how it is made is what can be effective and scary. Analog horror, when it comes to it still could be very scary, but visuals and all that, it's really just depending on who you work with, depending on how you direct things, can lead to a very interesting kind of experiment. Not every POV or every analog horror is perfect, but it's always trying that is best. It's always trying and pushing in a way to make something good. And it's something I really wish Invasion could do, because really, there's a lot of things that I think is really cool about Invasion that really worked. Like I explained, I thought it was interesting that they did the perspective of the cameras. I thought it was interesting that instead of infecting flowers or the main host, yet it lands on Earth with a meteor, and instead of your usual what happens in the beginning of the movie, it shows a broadcast first before it dives into the film. But I'm just gonna be dead ass with you though. The movie is not scary. You could do rewrite and do a bunch of changes to make it scary in many ways, shapes, or form. However, when really watching the movie, you really have to take it with a grain of salt and really think about some things. Even though I still like it in a way, it's not an Oscar winner kind of horror film. If I had to rank this movie, I would say it was a 9 out of 10 in either a college or high school filming class. That's what I could think of. It's good high school and, college-wise, but it's not an Oscar winner kind of film. These are not your kind of films that would be Oscar winners. These are your kind of films that are direct to DVDs or direct to VHSs, and either did not have any sort of care or did not put any sort of effort in, and yet you only think littles of it. But it's kind of sad, because I could tell when a movie that tries to add something was there, and I can see that for sure, but it's not fully fleshed, especially its jump scares. When you think of an alien horror film, or pretty much POV or analog horror, jump scares are supposed to unsettle you and actually jump at you when you're not expected. If you don't like jump scares, then guess what? You're a pussy. But really, jump scares are supposed to be an ideal way of showing how unexpected it is. Scarier in a way when it doesn't leap to your eyes. Movies like Creep, for example, do a really good job at showing the scares. And one of my favorite analog horrors is called Greylock. And the jump scares in that analog horror are very intense, especially with what the characters and what actually happens go through. It actually is very impactful. But in Invasion, I barely see that. All I see is drunken people walking around with almost gaping holes sometimes, and having maybe one shots that actually spooked me when I was 10 years old. But today, I look at it, I'm just like, what the fuck is this? Now, before we continue, there's actually some add-ons that I want to dive into about this that I really did before I even started talking more about this movie. What I did is that I filmed this movie twice. One with a couple of my friends of mine and kind of just goof around, and the other one was with me and Styx, a lovely friend of mine, to pretty much take notes on how many times there was something off or something that was just not placed right in the movie. And when I'm being by not placed right, I mean consistency of what is supposed to be scary or what was supposed to be realistic and all that. So we made an entire uh template pretty much of how many times there were cars that were nearby, how many times they circle around in the street, how many times they would play music out of nowhere, how many times there were either weird special effects or sound effects that didn't really seem right, jump scares, and how many times the cars either stopped or paused in a scene. And here are the results that I have here that me and Styx took a notice on, and I actually have right in front of me. For cars, if either we saw them aside from us or if it was driving nearby us, it would be 16 times. For either rotating or circling around the exact same streets or area will be 8 times. For either repeated music or just off music that was added with the scenes would be 15 times. For weird special effects and weird sound effects would be 286 times. This also includes helicopter noises or bird noises or noises like from the woods. For jump scares, it would be 13 times, and it does not matter if either it was a weird alien sound or even just an off-screen situation. It was there to begin with. And finally, for stopped cars, it would be 12 times. Now add that up all together with all the numbers, you got yourself 350 wasted materials or add-ons that would have actually made this movie really good if it wasn't really shoved in a really bad timing. Pretty much pacing also being an issue that goes with this film as well. Now, I'm normally not the one that likes to brag about scenes or consistencies, but when you're making a horror film that involves aliens taking over humans by like a virus or a host on a human, you have to be very interesting and very technical of how you are going to do it. And in this way of me trying to explain that, it shows that it was rushed. Now, I'm not the one that usually also likes to view Invasion as bad, but when it comes to way they do and set things on it, it's pretty bad, but in ways I don't blame them. If you want a good idea of how this movie actually was and all that, I highly advise to watch this movie on your own on Tubi, as it's the only site that I could really find where you can be able to watch it. I try to believe when it comes to any film, they should be viewed from a general audience to understand a perspective, either if it's good or mid. With Invasion, though, that's an opinion that I left off for the viewers. Here's a compare and contrast side by side between Invasion's jump scares in that film and the jump scares in Creep, for example. And just for an additional, the jump scares in Alien Abduction 2014.
Mm-hmm.
3, 2, 1.
Is that skin or
What the heck? Why is he just sitting there? Station.
Until this. Here's his wife coming in being like, what the fuck?
Was his wife and him doing it?
I'm scared, wait.
I just took that car. Are you okay?
Why are you doing this?
Oh no! You hit.
I want them to see this.
Alrighty.
I'll pause at a really good time too. Or actually, I'll just let this scene play out and then I'll pause later.
I'm gonna kill you. Get out of my way. Get out of my way. No.
Run him over. Over.
We got jump scare. We got jump scared by a bush, not a crow. Even though it sounded like a crow was coming in, though.
That's not really a crow. That's more like a bush. A bush?
See, this is what I mean. So I just put in the right fucking time. You see? That's a fucking bush. That's a fucking bush. That's not a crow. Here's when the shitty effects come in.
I will. If you have like stuff that I would say random.
Here we go. Here's its effect.
Ew, bro.
Yeah, you see what I mean?
I'm just screaming. Okay.
Look. If I
Hey,
go,
that's me.
that's weird because no one's there, but yet when it flashes, you see someone. That's a really
weird.
off little heading.
Is that like the UFO?
I don't know. I think it's the camera freaking the fuck out is what it is.
I think the camera got tired.
And now
I know. Man, if I was the killer, I'd just like walk.
where's a fucking flashlight when you need it?
I know.
Oh my god.
It's coming.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do. I don't want to die, Aaron. I don't want to. I don't want to die. Oh, Aaron.
Oh, dude, you're such a fucking ignorant motherfucker. Or from a POV horror movie.
Hello?
Look.
Oh.
If there's anyone trespassing on the premises, let it be known I have a knife. I'm not afraid to use it.
Okay. Everything's okay. Not a care in the world. It's all over.
Corey, grab Riley.
Oh my god, we're trapped.
Jesus Christ, what was that?
Let's go. Come on.
Corey, listen to me. I want you to take Riley and I want you to run. You get your mom and your sister and you get the hell out of here. You ready? Let's go.
We need help right now. Hello? Hello? No, I don't know where we are. Can you track this phone or something? Is there some way that you could do that? Hello?
Get some sleep, honey.
Jillian, wake up. What is it, Riley? They're back. Oh my god. Mom. Oh my god, something's up there. Jillian, get away from her.
Jillian, what is that?
Oh no, something's out in the woods. Oh, Corey, back. Shit. Oh my god. What is that?
I think it's moving.
What? No.
It's moving.
No. Guys, the clock. Who's watching us?
We gotta get out of here.
Mom, what are you doing?
The light's coming from the Thank you for coming back for us.
I think I got me one of the sons of bitches. Listen, I ain't seen them lights in a while. Let's get our ass out in the truck.
Camera.
Mom.
Okay.
Come on, little man, let's get in the truck.
Come on, Ray.
Let's go.
Come on, Ray. Let's go. Riley, let's go. Come on. Wait. My whole family's gone. And I'm lost. I'm scared.
better version of this kind of topic, or made a better version of what these aliens looked like, and that actually looks a lot more scarier, and I probably had night terrors of, compared to what the movie actually gave us. However, after really rethinking about some things, and even watching this film many, many times, I really thought about something, and it's, why judge a movie and all that when you couldn't really blame much of what it goes on? Because I went through so much research, deeper and deeper, to understand why this movie wasn't really that huge, and it all lies on is because of timing. And the fact that most of the director, aka Albert, tried to do with this movie, it wasn't really fully from his control, and it was from his wife's control, who's made other films that were credited from her, and it wasn't really entirely his fault, and overall, the entire film was pretty much rushed, and I kind of feel bad in a way, because this is the first film I've ever seen where it's a situation where someone who was trying to work so hard to actually make a scary movie but didn't have no control over it, and thus it became rushed, and all of it was not his fault. It's sad to me, because again, there's a lot of things that could have really worked for this movie, but it just unfortunately just fell out of place. You remember how I said that I ranked this movie as a college or high school film in a way? Well, here we go. On a review website that I can't really say the name, and he talks about pretty much about Invasion, and the comment that was released in April 26, 2013 is the comment I'm going to read right here. Alberto tried to post this comment but wasn't able to, so he sent it to me in vid email. I always enjoyed your studies and enlightful exploration of all movies, particularly your view and opinion of mine. With Infection, or we call it Invasion, we were really trying to make a movie entirely about the real-time experience, and we spent many, many months developing the soundtrack and the screening style. None of that translated vid of DVD or stream, unfortunately. Every time we screened the film at film festivals, we intend on controlling theater temperatures at 56 degrees and lamps in digital bulbs, plus carefully gamma adjustments, and most importantly, each scenery had its own live mix through a mix console, so we couldn't adjust the film's audio to the environment. Even the fabric of the theater scenery was tested and factored in. We knew it was successful because of audience's reaction after scenering, and for months afterwards, we used the CIA standards for effects, brainwave, and lights and color fractures, as well as audio, for instance. Hence, every bump in the road was a audio which we enhanced by bringing in our own audio setup entirely. So the film had distributing audio and live screening we set. It's a bummer we could never figured out how to imprint that media data and set up an DVD and stream. We knew it was a big risk, Albert. I personally do not blame this man for this film because, again, this movie would have done very well if it wasn't for the amount of struggles and the amount of issue that happened. Now, I'm not the kind of bummer to say that it's a bad film or anything like that. I still think it's a decently good movie with some very interesting things. It just really isn't Oscar winner kind of films. Name me one film that was low budgeted and is almost the same aesthetic like this, and it won winning Oscars. Come on, I'm waiting. No answer? Because it hasn't existed yet. But I still think in my heart this movie is good. Did it scare me at 10? Yes, it did. Does it still have really shitty shit going on? Yes. But it still works. And now with Invasion out of the way, now it's time for me to get into a film that is definitely my childhood, but is now completely ruined.
Best friends.